The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for connecting this morning to attend this webinar about logistics and IoT. My name is Johan Robert. I work as the Marcom manager at Sigfox. Just before starting and introducing the webinar program, just a few words about the way we will manage the event. First, to start with questions, you are invited to ask any questions by using the GoToWebinar interface. You have a small pane on the right where you can ask your questions. As you know, we may have a lot of questions, so we will select some questions during the presentation, and we will answer questions at the end during the Q&A section. Anyway, we will answer your questions by email after the event, so you get a very personal answer. So use the question pane for your questions, and we will answer them at the end. If you want, you will be able to get the access to the replay of the webinar, so you can share it with your colleagues or your contacts. And during the webinar, we will also launch 3 polls. So you will be invited to answer live during the event, so we can adjust our presentation and get more information about you. And last point, we have a gift for you, as you have decided to attend the webinar this morning. So please stay tuned until the end of the event, because Frank will give you a kind of surprise, and we'll give it to you at the end of the webinar. So we're done. We're ready to start. I can leave the stage to Frank Sober to introduce you the program and start the presentation.
Thank you, Johan. If you go to the next slide, please. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Frank Sauber. I'm a Director Ecosystem Partner at Sigfox. I have the pleasure today to have 2 wonderful guests with me. First, I'd like to introduce you Christopher Antinge from Sensolus. And he will give an update on his solution, Sensolus solution on supply chain. Joining us is also Daniel Derain from ST Micro. Daniel is a manager for RF Lab in Europe, and he will explain the components used in the Sensolus solution. To start with, next slide, please. I would like to give a little bit of an overview what this webinar is all about, and give a short update on what is Sigfox for those which don't know what is Sigfox and what we are doing. So at the end, it's about why location matters, and it comes down to the point: increased predictability and traceability and transparency. On the left side, you see problems which we get from our customers about avoid loss, visibility of deliveries. So where is my stuff, my package, my parcel, my container? The second thing is about defined responsibility. Who, when something is traveling, is the owner and the possessor of the goods? So that is certainly often a money-driven, insurance-driven question, which is often not clear. Customer satisfaction is about when is the goods traveling, where are they traveling, has to do with predictability, transparency. And finally, optimize stocks. So it's bounded capital. When you not know how big is your stock, where is your stock, especially when you have distribution partners in between, containers traveling half empty, and also upsell of services. That is all questions which are raised in the logistic industry. And what the desire is to have a global network, a long battery lifetime. If you put in electronics into that supply chain, you want to have a low-cost service with predictable costs. The solution has to be reliable because there's quite some value traveling around the globe. And geolocation, of course, where is. So it's a match on the left side of needs and the right side of what is desire. And we hope we give you some answers to that in the call today. Next slide, please. So some words about Sigfox. Sigfox was launched 2010 as a new way of service. We're an internet service provider. We're putting antennas in the landscape, and the message is about a global network, a reliable network, and everything as low cost. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, Sigfox is an operator. So that means we manage a network. You see here the air interface. That means physically we put antennas in the landscape globally. We're running that network, we maintain it, we make sure that, and we have a Sigfox backend cloud solution where the data can be pulled. The specialty on Sigfox is it's done for IoT, for sensors, low cost. One message is 12 bytes in the uplink and 8 bytes in the downlink. And what you can do with that, that is subject of Christoph and Daniel's presentation later on. So it's about connecting network status information made to be, and Sigfox in the middle is the managed service around that. Next slide, please. Question might be about a network operator. Always get the question about coverage, about reach. Our agenda is global. What you see here on the slide is how Sigfox in terms of reach has developed over the last years. In the meantime, we have reached 50 countries. So 50 countries are in the active rollout. This is this graph on the top left. Our target to close the year is 60. So we're in a good track by now about that. We have covered main region of Europe, increasing region in Asia, and also a good portion of North America. All are in rollout. That means, and this is the top right, that we cover close to 1 billion people already with our service. As we talk about good supply chain, that's on the bottom right. It means already more than 200 international airports, more than 40 international ports, and the whole thing is growing, as you can see from the trend. On the bottom left is what we call already covered countries. That means out of this 50, which are mentioned on the top left, 17 are covered already nationwide. The 17, you see a good range from New Zealand, a lot of European countries moving forward. So that is basically where Sigfox is coming from, network operator with a growing trend. Next slide, please. And every existing deployed Sigfox device is a tracker. And this is basically my last slide to hand over to Christoph. Slide, please. Explaining what I mean with that.
Thank you, Frank. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all get a fresh coffee because we tell you some more what we do in the supply chain. I'm Christoph. I'm CEO and founder of Sensulus. Next slide, please. So what do we do? Actually, we exist since 2013. We are headquartered in Belgium, and since 5 years we have been focused only on non-powered assets. We have been always active in supply chain and logistics, and we always found out actually from day one that we could optimize the supply chain by connecting the assets which are currently not connected. So a lot of you do have carriers in your supply chain. What is important to stay there is once you can connect them, you have tools to optimize. They become digital. In a short, in a nutshell, it is important, and the lessons that we learned is we could not do it with an off-the-shelf hardware. So we had to design from the chip level up to the final integrated application in the existing systems. We have different customers where we could show that actually due to its flexibility, starting from the hardware up till the software, it showed we could deliver the value. During my presentation, I will try to go a bit more in depth. What is this value? What is it all about? And where do we really make the difference? Where do we create the value? Next slide, please. So first of all, you have to question what is in it for the business, because technology is great, but you have to make the value. Already mentioned is visibility, getting on all your flows, which is a very valuable one. But of course, how can you put a metric on that one? In the end, you get a first-time control. Even more important is the over-the-top part in that sentence. What does that mean? A lot of existing systems, they cannot go over the top. What is over the top? It means just like Sigfox can provide, anywhere you come, you will have a visibility. You don't need to change contracts, you don't need to put infrastructure, and you don't rely on human intervention. The over-the-top concept is very important because it provides you flexibility. Once you have that visibility, we do see you become in optimization processes. What is your retention? What is your rotation? What is your stock of all your returnable transport packaging? And are there elements to be optimized? Finally, once you have a full control on your flows and your optimization of your capacity stock, you are even possible to make improved contracts. This is not something just to punish your customers or your suppliers. This is more to share information in a transparent way to make sure there's a better cooperation within the supply chain. And this is where you will make the difference. Once you optimize all your subcontractors, outsourced or just the direct suppliers, it will have an improved communication, and improved communication will result in a big cost benefit for all of us. Finally, and this is what we're seeing now, it's actually the last generation, is once you have everything connected, you have an improved supply chain and you have a control on that, you will be able to do new innovative service models. To give you an example, let's imagine you have carriers which are put at your supplier side. You see, you don't need them as a stock, so you say whatever, they can still be there. You can even allow them to use your containers in their supply chain and charge them for the use. Then you're in a pooling service. This is possible once you have connected everything. So a lot of you will be looking, what is the ROI of providing IoT in my supply chain? Never look at one of the bullets. Always try to have a combined benefit of all the bullets, and certainly with a future view how to get money back from it. Next slide, please. So within this, we are often called the Fitbit in your supply chain. Everybody of you should know the Fitbit. If you want to do some sports, you want to know, am I moving? Am I moving a lot? Where do I move? Is there a community who can support me in that process? Well, actually, we provide something similar because we make sure that returnable transport packaging is connected with a smart tracker. And that smart tracker, he will not only focus on location, geolocation, but also on the effective activity of the packaging, because it's as important to know how things are used, what are the patterns, is there a change in the flow, than knowing where the things are. And if you combine both, then you actually have a solution that will help you, first of all, to monitor, secondly, to optimize, but finally, the main goal will to innovate your complete supply chain. Next slide, please. Okay, let's do a small drill down in the technology, because all of you are experts, so we do know what exists today in the market. What we have seen as the first, let's say, drivers for the revolution or the evolution in supply chain is, first of all, it needs to be a modular platform. We've seen it's not only about the hardware, it's not only about the software, they have to be both modular, and depending on the real need and the real use case, you will actually choose a la carte. What does that mean? Some of our customers want very specific sensors and they do not need our complete software solutions. Other ones, they are satisfied with a more generic sensor, but they do need the full application side on the platform. So due to the modularity, you're actually able to fit in the industry. What we have learned from after 5 years of tracking in with IoT is, for sure, there is no one solution that fits all. The trick is to get something that's a la carte, that can be tailor-made and tuned in a very fast way, and this is key, before you actually can go into a real solving the problem of a company. So the link between what we call the hardware platform and the software platform is what we call the IoT middleware. I will go more in detail with some nice examples in the next slides, but most important to understand is we only get our results because we fully control the edge and the cloud. And due to the interaction, we can optimize. People will say, what do you optimize? We optimize battery, we optimize cost, we optimize use, maintenance, life cycle. So the third point that is driving in the revolution is the connectivity as a service. And I think it was already well introduced by Frank. Sigfox has a coverage of 1 billion people. So it tells me enough. I do not need to install anything and I can connect to 1 billion potential customers. Finally, and this is why I'm very pleased to have also Daniel in this webinar, is finally the big guys are entering the low power electronic market in this segment. And this is a key, because this allows to be mass market ready. Not only mass market ready in production, but also in cost levels. So I think, and everybody on this call knows, that cost of a device is one of the critical elements in the massive rollout. Now, as the big chip vendors are entering, this will be possible. I will go more in detail later on what we mean with that. Then something that's often neglected, it is still a technology, it's more a design step that has to be made. You have to be sure that you have a full self-install in less than 1 minute. We have customers asking us, how do you roll out 10,000 of sensors? The trick is, of course, making sure they work for many years, but the second trick is making sure you can install them very fast, otherwise the impact of installation is too big. Next slide, please. So let me now drill down, what do we really offer as Sensulus and where do we make the difference? This is probably the most important slide for Sensulus part. So we have industrial trackers, we have our own tracking devices. There are many out there and there will be many more to come. For us, that's nice because we would like to plug them all on our Sensulus core. So what we see is we have an edge agent. So we control the edge on the device. What do we get from it? First of all, we have on the server side, we have what we call the Sensulus core. It provides us smart activity and geolocation. So I can tell you in more detail in one of the next slides with some good examples. What does that mean? Data integrity. It's also one of the elements we've seen as a high value. If you are in supply chain, I can guarantee you there will be loss of data. Nobody can guarantee the full data integrity. We have made mechanisms, algorithms, which are also patented, where we can actually harvest the data in an asynchronous way. So if there is data loss, we will get the data back in a later stage. Then smart energy management, putting 10,000 sensors in the fields is step one. Updating them or changing batteries or even replacing them with new sensors, that's one of the most important steps that will come in the next year. It's what you typically call the life cycle management. So you need to manage them very well. Then the edge management. This is often a bit of a neglected point. It's not because you have the device and you have the components. You still need to have, for example, bootloaders to do firmware upgrades, being able to do over-the-air firmware upgrade, which is very powerful. Also certification libraries and so on. Why? As I mentioned before, every device is specific. And we do see that some of the customers, depending on the packaging, they need another form factor. So you want to have this type of a hardware platform and a firmware platform that allows you to go very fast to fully certified devices without reinventing the wheel again. We have been extremely specialized on the edge management, now based on the ST micro libraries. Acknowledgements of the remote edge control. So once you put changes in the field, you have to make sure they are accepted, and you have actually what we call a fully updated in the field library to make sure every device is on the latest version. Finally, the optimized Monarch implementation. As most of you might know, Monarch is a protocol where you can do region switching depending on the continent on where you are. We have optimized the implementation to make sure that it's extremely energy efficient depending on your real supply chain flow. Finally, applications. We have some applications. They are very specific and bring a specific value in the chain, but we are also able to integrate easily in a third-party cloud because a lot of horizontal platforms are already present in the market. Why do we do this? Let's say this full stack is because it allows us to full an end-to-end security. We do a full device lifecycle management, and we provide all the tools for operational data analytics. In the end, why is this? We ensure scalability, data reliability, but most of all, also future flexibility. And now I want to show you with some examples in the next slides how that's work. So next slide, please. So first, reliable data. On the left, we see a picture typically of assets which are in a truck moving through Spain. You will typically get data gaps. It's normal because you might have an issue on the network coverage, you might have radio interference because you're in container, and even atmospheric conditions can impact your signal quality. So what did we add? Based on a sensorless core, we have smart data recovery. So we make sure the data is recovered. Secondly, we also do guaranteed remote settings. So if there is a setting to be changed to improve the data recovery, this is acknowledged over the platform. Next slide, please. I tell you something about the battery life. It's one of the parameters that's often neglected in any decision process. A lot of people tell me, Christoph, make me a device that lasts for 10 years. Well, honestly, it's better you make a device that only lasts for 3 years and you have the software and the control on your process that you can push it to 5 or even 7 years because you don't need to use it in the way it was intended to use. I'll give you just a simple explanation. Supply chain, it's extremely dynamic, and we've seen that all over our customers. They have different types of packaging. The flow is changing. It's a dynamic flow. They have lanes that go faster, lanes that slow down. And also important, they have contract evolutions in the supply chain. So the first thing that we do, for example, is we look at proactive settings. So the device has a certain behavior. We will look, can we improve the behavior to send less data and to optimize battery life? Secondly, we have edge filtering. As you can see in the graph on the left, there is actually GPS points with jumpers because it's always moving. It's on a boat here because it's a good example of a movement pattern. So you can actually put on the device filters which actually filter out this type of movement to make sure you don't have any false positives. Finally, again, depending on the type of packaging and flow, we can push remotely types of profiles in batch. And this is an important one because this allows you always to keep a healthy operational field experience if you go in volume. Next slide. Scalable risk. Important to tell you have to go to the field. Often it's neglected the effort of installation and instance in the field. You have to make sure you have a full control on your process. The delivery process and implementation process is as important as the technology. Once in the field, you need lifecycle management to know when can we change batteries, when do we have to replace, and finally, operational troubleshooting. If things go wrong, you want to have tools to know what is actually going wrong. You have sensors, you have batteries, you have a network, you have cloud side, you have to have full control on your stack. Finally, what do we provide from Senslus? End-to-end system diagnostics, a lot of bulk tools, just to make sure you can manage the bulk. And then something which is new is the over-the-air firmware upgrades, because we also see changes in the regulation and changing in the networks. Next slide, please. Sorry. Johan, next slide, please. Okay. I want to refer to one case, one back. So it seems we have a little bit of delay. So I hope we're not sending slides over the Sigfox network over 12 bytes, but it should be okay. So Johan, can you go one slide back?
Yep, this one. fully certified eyewear platform?
Okay, let me first go to that one. Yes, it's okay. Let me go to that one, the fully certified hardware platform. So we recently launched what we call a hardware platform. A lot of people ask me, Christoph, what is your new device? Well, actually, we don't have a new device. We have a multiple of new devices. We have a hardware platform. Why did we do that? First of all, it's the first device which is fully global operations on a single device based on the ST micro chipset. So we are able to go to any region in the world. We can enable remotely any region in the world, and we can switch between the region if that's required. Secondly, we have put a fully modular indoor and outdoor localization chipset. We have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS, and we can completely combine whatever we want. And then something important to mention is we have the chip-based optimized design. So we are not in the module space, and I will tell you why. We do not want any black boxes anymore in our device. As you will know, and I'm sure that Daniel will go more in depth, ST is a software-defined radio. This allows you to actually tweak everything you need to tweak on the chipset. It's also important because there is still a very strong evolution, both in the Sigfox network as in all the other protocols that are coming up. So you want to be on a software-defined radio. And this is where I really thank also ST to providing the possibility to bring that to a chip level. Secondly, and that's certainly something that Danielle can go in more detail, once you're on a chip level, you're ready for mass production, which allows you to press down the costs in volume. The fourth point, which is very specific to our hardware platform, is it took some work. It's often underestimated, but we have an all region class 0 antenna design on a single design. So it means wherever you are, you will always be on the best performing emission of radio. This is key. The better you emit, the better the results and the less data loss. Finally, extremely energy optimized. So as we are doing this already for 5 years, and this is the third generation of product we launch, every ampere has been optimized. We have been focusing for more than 12 months to squeeze out maximum out of everything. And this is not about selection of batteries and selection of chip. This is software, both on the edge as on the software side, cloud side. Of course, there's a full heavy rating on the device, and we have multiple form factors. So depending on your use case, we can tweak and actually build specific form factors and have a very fast certification, which allows you to go fast in the field at a minimal cost. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to refer to the Airbus global supply chain case that we have. So we have been working quite some time with Airbus on the group for the supply chain of the bigger structures and jigs on the different components which are shown in the pictures. We have also introduced a warehouse management based on beaconing indoor. And I think there is where we do make often let's say the difference is that based as we are very modular on the hardware side and we are very modular on the software side, we could actually during the last 2 years tweak our solution to make sure that it really fits the real need of Airbus Group. The Airbus Group needs are also evolving over time, but as we have the flexibility on both sides, we are able to follow them and to still supply in what they need. So this is for me, the main take that I would give to the audience is we have been working on a very modular hardware and software cloud approach, which actually gives you a very fast time to market based on chip design, which is actually mass adoption ready. So I think this is a perfect end to give now the floor to Daniel.
Thank you, Christoph. Just before we move on in the program, I just want to launch a first poll. You have 1 minute to answer. Let me launch the poll. It's just to know who is looking at IoT technology in your company. The poll is open. Daniel, you can move on, and to all the attendees, you can now answer the poll. It will help us to better understand your need and your thought about IoT tracking.
Okay, thank you, Johan. Thank you, Christoph. Good morning, all. I'm Daniel Derrin, responsible for RF Application Lab here in France, covering many EMEA regions. Can you go back to the slide, please, Johan? I can still see the poll only.
Oh, sorry.
Into the audience, please apologize that we're running a little bit, take a little bit longer time. But of course, you're excited enough, hopefully, to listen to Daniel.
Okay, let me try to be a bit faster than than initially planned. So first of all, 2 slides to describe a bit ST, what we are doing. Then I will explain in another 2 slides why ST is considering that all this asset tracking makes sense and is definitely a market we want to go in. And finally, some details going down to what Christophe explained about his device and what ST can offer in terms of a solution on hardware and software side. So maybe some of you may not know correctly what ST is about. So basically, ST is everywhere where electronics is making a positive difference to people's lives. We make driving devices safer, greener, and more connected. We are supporting our customers to develop smart things and making home and cities smarter. And finally, we are also developing a lot of things on the industrial field. The next slide, please. So to cover all of this different area, we do have a big portfolio of silicon and associated software packages, which allow us to cover automotive markets, power devices, analog chipset as well, up to RF transceivers, as for sure needed for Sigfox. We also reusing a lot of things coming from initially a smartphone market for MEMS and imaging sensors that is now starting to be deployed in industrial and Internet of Things field of application as well. And finally, we do have for sure a broad range of microcontroller, which allow to implement the software which is being needed to connect all those peripherals together. Next slide, please. So why we do consider that it makes sense definitely to develop our activities around what we call geolocalization for Internet of Things. Basically, we understood from various market analysis that definitely the revenue will grow a lot around all of these geolocalization IoTs. We are, as Christophe was saying, talking about, I would say, a classic asset tracking, which were more focusing on localize where the asset is. But actually now we are moving to something different, thanks to smarter devices, which allow to bring more data to the information technology side, the cloud. Okay, so thanks to all of this, we are able now to understand a bit more for sure where the device is. So that's the basic position, the status of the device. We could also change the status of the device according to a specific trigger event, the temperature, the pressure. If the device is going to land or take off, you need to understand if you thanks to the pressure sensor, if you will keep going, transmit data or not. And for sure, thanks to either artificial intelligence directly on the smart devices or in the cloud side, you could analyze data in a deeper way. Next slide, please. Another key aspect of all of these IoT, geolocalized IoTs, we do see on this graph showing the million of connections per year in 2016 up to 2026, that definitely one of the market that will have the biggest growth is asset management. And for sure, some of this will still go further. So that's the one that we are commonly using to get connected is energy management, but actually the progression will be 5 biggest on asset management. So that's definitely something we want to address worldwide and more specifically in our region. So next slide, please. So basically, what does it mean to be able to geolocalize some assets? We want to make sure that we will be able to understand where the device stand across the different type of localization. So you could be in a factory, in a city, or in a rural area, but you still want to make sure that the device will be tracked. So several technology exists, and one will not replace the other. So you need a combination of them. But there is one key aspect of the low power wide area network is the fact that is always present in all the different area. And so it's very powerful to be sure that you will keep the low power consumption of your device, a cost-effective implementation with a good reliability of the position. And I want, within the next slide, to explain a bit what we can offer to cover these different aspects. So first of all, we want to be able to connect the device. So we will need for sure to start with to bring a microcontroller. Okay, so in order to integrate all the libraries coming from Sigfox or from other suppliers, together with the own application coming from, for example, Sensolus. And you need to be connected to the Sigfox network thanks to a transceiver and a companion chip in order to go up to the antenna. So that's the very basic stuff. Next, thanks to some motion and environmental sensors, you will be able to understand where you are and to be able to interact with your environment. So, for example, landing, taking off, thanks to pressure sensor, temperature sensors, humidity sensors, all of the kind of things you want to understand. 3-axis accelerometer in order to detect a free fall, for example, for your container, trolley, parcel, whatever. And the next things for sure is to be able to understand where you are. And if you do not want to only base the localization on Sigfox network, you can improve it thanks to either Wi-Fi, thanks to the different access point available on the warehouse, whatever, or for sure you can also use a GPS module. So that's basically the core ICs, so internet integrated devices that you need in order to bring and to develop a Sigfox asset tracking. And on the next slide, I can. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot the battery management for sure. You need to make sure that you will constantly have a look to the battery consumption, thanks to a specific DC-DC converter. Yeah. Next slide, please. So the different block purposes, very briefly already discussed on the previous slide. So the motion and environmental sensors that are critical in order to identify where you are in the environment, the positioning improvement, okay, that you will also be able to use, and the Wi-Fi is very often used now in order to trigger the positioning thanks to reading the SSID of a non-spot. And basically you can, on the back end, identify where you are. So this is very often used in warehouse, for example. Power management, in order to, as I said before, making sure that the device will, and the battery will be as much as possible not used and only carefully used. And the Sigfox and BLE connectivity, that's an asset that is coming also from ST, allowing to be able to be connected through S2LP, so that's the transceiver, and the associated companion chip for the Sigfox connectivity. STM32 or Blow Energy in order to be able to get either a generic purpose microcontroller or directly the BLE connectivity directly integrated on it. Next slide, please, Christophe, Johan. And one of the key points we want to highlight is that thanks to our solution, we can bring a global and low power solution. So basically, let's take a very basic example. So we do have a transceiver, a microcontroller, and let's say a 3-axis MEMS, so allowing just to identify if you do have a free pole or where the position of the device. And you want to estimate the battery consumption of your device. So for example, you are in Europe, so you can only transmit up to 14 dBm according to the regulation, and you want to transmit 10 times per day, okay? And basically, the average system current will be very low, allowing a battery lifetime of 12 years. Of course, that's depend on the use case, depends on the battery capacities, but definitely this is something that is achievable and already being deployed. And finally, we are also implementing, thanks to specific software and reference design, the Sigfox Monarch feature, which allow you to be able to transmit regardless the ISM band and regardless where you are over the planet. So either 868 megahertz band in Europe, or 915 megahertz in US, for example. So that's the way to make sure that you do have a global and low power solution using ST solution, and like what Sensolus has done already. So I guess that's my last slide, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Christophe. Johan?
Maybe yes, we can launch the second poll for a very short period of time. Let's go for it. It's just to have your opinion about what could prevent you from implementing IoT tracking solutions for the moment. During this period, I invite you to ask your questions because now we are close to start the Q&A session.
And the gift. And the gift.
And in a few seconds, Frank will give you the gift as promised at the beginning of the webinar.
So the gift is very simple. I can talk about that before you switch back to the slide. So first of all, thank you, Christophe and Danielle, for the nice presentation. We all three, including Johan, we all four will be in Berlin at our Sigfox Global Conference called Sigfox Connect on the 25th of October. And you all are here invited to come to this event. Now I need the slide, Johan.
Yep. The poll is, and thank you everyone for answering. The poll is closed now. And we're back to the slides.
And I need the next slide.
Yep.
So we are in Berlin at the Sigfox Connect on the 25th of October. We invite you to come there. You will get a free guest ticket. You have here webinar logistics guest. This is your promo code. When you go to buy tickets, use this promo code, webinar logistics guest. We expect a great audience. We have, as I said, Daniel will be there, Christophe will be there. We have overall 160 exhibitors. So we expect a couple of thousand people coming there. We have the keynote speech of our CEO. If that was interest, you're more than welcome you to join. We received a couple of interesting questions, which I can say we cannot go through all of them, but to some which I've noted down, I would like to. The first one is a very easy one. This is more for Johan. Do we get the slides and is this webinar recorded?
Yes, for sure. The webinar is recorded. If you want the slides, I'll make a PDF out of it and I will share it with you guys. And if you need to share the webinar content with someone, the webinar registration will stay active after the event. So the recording will be easily available online during weeks after the event. Okay. And of course, I think we will distribute it to our sales organization with the respective companies, Sensor ST and Sigfox. Then there was a question: is Sigfox is covered now in 50 countries. What is if the location is not covered? So 50 countries means this is we have an operator which runs this country with a complete rollout of the country. That doesn't mean that we cannot install antennas in countries which are not have the duty of or contract already for global coverage. So Sigfox running global flexible coverage models, loaning base station. The only requirements we have that it fits to the local requirements, which I think, and you've seen the map of the world, we pretty much have in place. So we have a flexible model. Our Sigfox operator can help you on that questions in all kinds of form. And we have already today base stations running in countries where we don't have an official global country rollout running. That fits the questions. Another question, I think probably that's for Christophe, is how much the device cost?
Yes, it's quite a good question because due to what's happening today in the market, everybody can look at the BOM cost. So what's the electronic component cost? The big advantage is with companies such as T entering, it's a mass product, so you can easily make actually a very cheap product. The only thing I just always want to mention, and it's a fact for all of our customers, you have to look at the life cycle costs. So it's not only about the cheapest device, it's also about your maintenance, replacements, what is your use case, do you need a GPS or not, for example, which has a huge impact. So cost can actually go very low, up what we always say, today it's even potential to go below $10 US, but it can range up to $50 US as well. So it's depending on your use case. I give you just one example. If you have like a geolocation without GPS, and you need to find something back, and the operator itself is then looking for more than 1 hour for specifically finding back the asset because location is not accurate enough, you actually save already in one step completely your device cost. So always look at the big picture, but today technology is at that stage, even in a mass volume rollout, it can be quite cheap.
Thank you, Christoph. I have another question here. I think this is more for Daniel. How to build a device? Was a more general question. I think it's about.
Okay. So basically, on ST side, we do provide, as I said, the needed blocks in order to get all of them being connected together. But it's very important to make sure we do have the right man in the middle, okay, in order to integrate all of this together, get the device being certified across the planet if being required, and making sure that the people will have the right skills in order to do it on RFs, on software, on hardware side. And company like Sensolus definitely bring this kind of added value on top of the silicon and software blocks we do provide. So it's a requirement that we are very often requested, is to make sure that the blocks are being used by people who know how to use it, and making sure that the right skills are available.
Thank you. I think that we have a couple of questions around global network and frequency. So let me start. I think it's a question for all of us in combination. So first of all, from the global network, so Sigfox is a global network. So a contract we do with Sigfox is valid for the whole world. That's one thing. I think it's important differentiator. The second is on frequencies. No, there is not one frequency, but all the frequencies are in the range of 900 megahertz. Right now, we have 6 different radio zones to cover the world, from Australia to Argentina. That's about some of the frequency. Maybe I hand over to Daniel to talk about the chipset supporting that. And then handing over to Christoph to talk about the globetrotting and Monarch feature. Maybe you can do that in the order.
Yeah. So on chipset side, for sure, there is a need to make sure that your device will be able to commute from one region to the other, and the device should, I would say, guess in brackets in which region it is. So first of all, the device should be able to receive data and transmit data in the various locations. So that's the case of the S2LP, okay, so the transceiver we are using. And thanks to Monarch, which is a specific pattern being deployed over a Sigfox network, we can guess where we are and then adapt the transmit frequency according to this pattern we received on Sigfox network. So each time the device will start working, it will define on which frequency he has to do it, thanks to this specific pattern being provided by Sigfox network. So that's basically, I would say, the very basis of Monarch, requesting for sure specific hardware also. And we do have a reference design that will be shown at the Sigfox Berlin event end of this month.
Okay. From our side, from let's say application and device side, it's very important that you have the right trigger. It's already mentioned, there are different frequencies depending on location where you are in the world. So you have to find a way to detect where you are at a certain moment. And at that moment, you have to be as energy efficient possible to know that location before transmitting. So it depends a bit on the supply chain. It depends on your flow. There are different mechanisms. So an implementation of Monarch is not only about knowing on which frequency you are, but it's also knowing the trigger. And that jumps probably to the next question, which is about in-flight. One of the industries which is quite leading today is actually having Internet of Things sensors in flights for cargo or for other items. It's still one of the questions where the airlines are struggling. It's more related to the battery than to actually the emission on the radio. So that's something to keep in mind, that the lithium story with the power banks and everything that's probably can explode like Galaxy Notes, that is what currently is blocking a bit of regulation. And indeed was also one of the limiting factors is that each airliner has his specific rules. So there is no one general regulation for the whole world. It's work in progress, but it's going very fast, and it's certainly one of the next steps in the next months to come.
Thank you, Christoph. I think I have last questions, which I think we can do in the webinar. I think it's a question for Christoph. It was a question for where are the target customers, where customers are using, is it transport service, logistic companies, insurance companies, talking about your customer base, looking into that.
I think our biggest customer base is in intralogistics. So that's mostly an OEM manufacturer who control on their full supply chain on an international level. That's our biggest customer base. We do see there's quite some traction now in the logistics fields, which are just optimizing their operations. So it's a bit of a mix, but I do feel the biggest added value certainly in returnable packaging industry, where they have ownership on the carrier, where actually the components are shipped on. That's typically the OEM manufacturing.
Yeah, so, before maybe we close the Q&A session, I suggest that we launch the last question just to better understand how we could improve the next episode of our webinars about IoT and logistics. Let me launch the last question. Is just to know what about you may need additional information, because our plan is to organize new webinars in the coming month, and if we target the right topics, we think it will help you to improve your knowledge about IoT and especially IoT application for your logistic industry.
So we hope that we cover most of the questions. Please apologize if we could not capture all or answer all the questions due to timing, but we will look at that questions offline after that and get back to you. We're all looking forward to see you in Berlin. For those which are interested in that, if it's interested, of course, tell your colleagues. So we are here. It will be an exciting event moving forward. That is it, I think, from my side. So again, thank you for Christoph and Daniel.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
And if it's so excited, we have the call again this afternoon at 5 o'clock.
And just to finalize the event, know that we will surely send you another invite, because we plan to organize new webinars to go further in detail in on this topic. So stay tuned, and thank you for attending today.